Sorry, your glasses.
On the table, on the chair. Where you bring it from? Here.
Take a nap.
Is the screen on?
Before the start of this debate, Daphne told me that we're going to win. That's a comforting lie, and I think it was better. Because, look, our stance of this debate is simple. We prefer a world in which the lie is never exposed. However, we will engage with the world where the lie is exposed. But even if it is exposed, we think it's still better in every circumstances than being hit with the truth in a very hard way. That is to say, and I'll go into this later, how the truth, if it is released at a much slower rate. On our side, the burdens in the side of government are twofold. The first, where is the conceptualization of life better? And the second, where the harshness of the truth are softened and whether or not that in itself is good. Okay, speaker. The first argument is, when the lie is exposed, right? When a comforting lie is exposed, we have to understand, and all conceptualization of what a harsh truth is and a comforting lie is will be explained in many examples, and I think that both sides are going to use in examples that are preferable to each side. Very messy debate. Anyway, it's a very worst case when the lie is exposed. But we're going to talk about why that's not so bad. We tell you when a lie is exposed, it is exposed in two ways. The first, it happens through an internal structure. That is to say, you actualize that you are being lied to. How this works is, an example would be, thank you, when you are raised as an African American person, side of government would prefer a world in which you believe that this person is going to make it. You believe that you can be a lawyer. You believe that you can be a scientist. And we would encourage African American parents to do these things. Now, at the point at which you can do this, we think it's better off for the child in two key aspects. The first, the child couldn't. It's not wrong child, right? Okay. We tell you that it's better for the child at the point at which the child. It's better for the child at the point at which, even if he fails, even in our complete worst case, that child can conceptualize that the very fact he fails is because I tried. I tried and I failed, and I can blame it on the structures of society. We don't think you get that on your side. But also, right? And I'll go. Okay, this later. But why is better for? You got my speech. Okay, but in the second structure, right, the way it exists is that we think that you realize that it's of an authoritative power that it's telling you that it's a harsh lie. And tells you a comforting lie to begin with. That is to say, if a mother that's enduring an abusive relationship, you would actively tell your children that it's not as bad. You will try to cover things up to make that child to make it better. And we think this is good, right? Because we think it's better because first, the child couldn't have done anything if the truth was when that child heard that harsh truth, if he accepted that harsh truth. When there's abuse going on in the house and your mother draws coloring book for you, trying to make the best circumstance for you possible, lies to you in every possible way she can, we think it's better. Secondly, we think it's better because even when that truth comes in, right, even when a divorce happens, for example, you are confirmed that maybe it wasn't so good after all. And you can always go back to that time and point where you believed in yourself and you believed that you had a really good family, when you had a father that cared about you, that didn't leave you behind. We tell you this is the world we support, because in this essence, no matter how bad things are, you can always go back to the past. If the truth is exposed in any single circumstance, and you get a feeling of it wasn't always so bad. My life was happy. And this is really important, right? Because in circumstances of which your harsh truth leads to an individual leading his life in the essence that I will never try to do anything, or I've never had a happy life to begin with, at least we give something to people to cling on of. Your side depends on people getting happy within their terrible circumstance. Our side, however, no matter, and I think that can exist on both sides, I'll tell you why it's not so bad on our side. at the point at which that happens, you're more likely to normalize your bad life, you have a bad life, and you have nothing happy to fall back onto. At least on our side, you have that. Before that, I'll take Sanji.
So you want people in your world to live an illusion of what happiness means, even after they find out that that lie was completely a lie, they didn't actually find any happiness whatsoever?
Yes, that's exactly what we want. And the reason for this is, right, if you can go back on somewhere to fall back onto, as I said before, that's a state of absolute happiness. You're also more likely to glorify that time and paint it as something that's like the best possible thing that's ever happened. Speaker, also understand that in the vast majority of circumstances, what happens is, it is an internal structure of realizing that my life is not so great after all. And even if not true, I think I already engaged like when it's authoritative. But why is this preferable? Within the first, you're more likely to learn from your journey in a very holistic way. That is to say, on all, you will learn that things will never work out for you. You will learn that no matter how much effort you put into society, into making yourself a good person, that I will never alleviate myself from this cycle of poverty. We think that, and this is really important, right, that your harsh truths aren't always absolute truths. And this is bad on your side. When you prove that maybe you can make it out of that cycle of poverty. Maybe if you try harder, you can become some sort of entrepreneur. We think that at one point you should give people this hope. It's better. And if they fail, they can blame on structured society. They can say, I had this happy time. This was me in my time.
Look, can I know why the side of government believes that a harsh truth is always something that tells you everything that you do is worthless, doesn't mean anything, and won't amount to anything?
Alright, I think that needs to come from Daniel because I don't know an example of what that is. But the thing is, right, I think a harsh truth always, I think the spirit of motion wants to determine when it's in a bad spirit. Because if it's a good spirit, we do not understand why it cannot exist without a comforting lie as well. Speaker, okay, and this is, alright, so why is it better when you realize the lie? The first is, you can try to improve your circumstances. We told you that hard truths aren't absolute. Let's say you can work harder. You try to get out of structural racism, but even if it's worse, you still attain comfort in the moment. So, at the point at which you attain comfort in the moment, whichever this is really important, because on their side, you literally have nothing to fall back onto. On our side, you always have whatever happy moment you were in when you told a comforting lie. If I'm in a relationship and you want to break up with me, you're more likely to tell me like, you're a really nice person, you're more likely to comfort that person, you're more likely to care about that person's feelings. And that is to say that at the point at which that individual that's been broken up with actualizes that maybe I did make mistakes in the future, learns from future relationships as well. This is going to be a much more holistic and organic way of growing as compared to opposition. Speaker, I've told you two main things in my speech. I've conceptualized what a life of, or what a life in which you are lied to looks like, and I've conceptualized what a life of harsh truths also looks like. And I told you, even in our very worst case, it's not that bad. For all those examples, let's lie to children, let's lie to everyone, because everyone loves a good lie.
Yay! Lying is bad.
Call for leader of opposition. Here.
When Josh was in an abusive relationship with his girlfriend, when he convinced himself that he was enjoying himself, even though every single day it was getting increasingly toxic, it was getting increasingly poisonous, it literally jeopardized his exam opportunities, he told himself that he was still happy, that he was still perfect, that his life is fantastic. Now when he reflects on those memories, he feels like a goddamn fool. He feels like all those happy memories were not something that worked for him anymore, and he feels like he wasted his time, and his choices were irrelevant. He had no fallback. He could not recollect that nice teddy bear she gave him because it was just torn with so many emotions, so much foolery, so much brokenness. We think that generally speaking, that is something that is applicable, and that's how we're going to engage with our case. 3 arguments beyond that, right? Firstly, how you are robbed of meaningful choices when you are deprived of meaningful information. Why information is essential to make actual choices for yourself. We'll show you the harms of that as well. Secondly, when there is inevitable trauma on the path you choose, at least on our side, you can prepare yourself, equip yourself for the journey ahead, you make the right decision, or at least you mitigate a lot of the harms that will inevitably fall upon you. And thirdly, how there is third-party harm. So even if you lie to yourself, even if you never are held accountable for what you experience, you're always going to force it upon somebody else. They're always going to get victimized in the process. Before we get into that, let's just make some clarifications. Firstly, is not just about lying to others, it's also about lying to yourself, such as you can never opt out, so you lie to both, right? We think they kind of understood this, but we just want to make it clear. Secondly, we can tell it softly to them, right? We don't have to say outright that you should commit suicide or that they're going to lose this debate. We can say, oh, I think it was a kind of mixed debate, but I think we had some edges over here and here and here, right? These are the sorts of presentable ways that we don't have to traumatize them as we explain what's happening in reality, right? They cannot make straw men of how we're going to present it. So with those clarifications in place, into the first argument, how you rob meaningful choices when you're deprived of reality. Recognize, choices can only be made when you know your options, when you know the costs, when you know the trade-offs and how those align to your own personal interests. You are banished from that when somebody is lying to you. You are banished from that when you lie to yourself as well, right? So the reason you need to know the trade-off and compromises are for three reasons. Firstly, you alone face the consequences. When often other people are going to be hijacking these fabrications, right? I'll analyze that in a second. So which means that often you are going to be manipulated into choices that you did not want to make. Now, why is it likely that other people can hijack you when they're dealing with fabrications? Because when you are already in the mindset of fabrication, right? And maybe somebody else counters it with another fabrication. It's really not two fabrications. Whereas when you're actively searching out for the truth, what exactly is the truth behind all these things that I believe in? You're constantly searching yourself. You're in constant introspection. That means whenever somebody plants an idea in you, you will check it, you will critique it, you will think about it so that you cannot be hijacked, so that you always think about the consequences more. Sit down. Secondly, right, we say that you set absurd expectations that are going to hurt you further. You think that you are going to be loyal to your spouse because you're really a good person and how if you just really believe in it, right? You set these absurd expectations that will only smack you back in the face when reality inevitably is going to hit. I'll analyze that in more detail later, right? And thirdly, we say that you're going to be finally grounded in your choices. That is to say, when you know that you made a reality based on choices, when you know that you had a hard, painful decision, but you finally came to a conclusion rather than just an easy decision, you're more likely to stick with it. What are the benefits of this? Firstly, you are proud within your choice. So that when even the harms are incurred by you, you can say that I made this choice, I knew what was going on, I'm going to be powerful and overcome it because I already had the emotional preparation to do so. Secondly, you do not feel the emotional instability of cycling through lie after lie. So maybe they can feel that when you realize something is wrong, you'll just shift your tactics. But recognize, right, the period of transit is extremely traumatic for individuals. So that opt-out mechanism is always going to, and on top of that, it will just repeat itself. So that opt-out mechanism is not viable. And thirdly, right, we said that when you are more loyal to specific causes, you are more likely to make a meaningful impact on that. So if I became a ballet dancer, and I know I'm not a great ballet dancer, or I know I'm not a great debater, but at the point at which I already conceptualize those harms, and I invest myself in there, and I really push myself, and I've already prepared myself, so that even when I face failures, I will invest myself more, that means we get better changes. It means I end up a slightly better debater, maybe not a great debater, but at least moderately better than if I suddenly pull out halfway through. Yes?
When individuals treat truth, harsh truths, as absolute truths, their choices are also manipulated to make choices that are in their comfort zone. Why is it better when individuals stay in their comfort zone?
We think either way, the people are always going to believe it's an absolute truth. But the thing is, when you're constantly seeking out what is the harsher truth, what is the real way that is going to traumatize me but at least make me more aware, on our side you're more likely to conceptualize the truth or do your own independent investigation to check yourself. So that's increased likelihood on our side of the house. Second argument. When there is inevitable trauma on the path you choose, you can at least prepare yourself, set your expectations properly, and equip yourself for the journey. This argument is going to rely chiefly on characterization. Sit down. So the first is when it comes to grief. When there is a cancer patient who could either go for expensive chemotherapy that will drain her family of money, or she could just, to a certain extent, perhaps end it, right? At least on our side, she can make amends. That provides emotional help for herself and emotional help for those that she knows, right? That is something she can have. Like, we're not gonna lie, right? You're obviously gonna be damn traumatized, you're gonna suffer a little bit, but at least that's an objective benefit, because either way you're gonna be traumatized in your final moments. At least on our side, you can make amends and know that you died with meaning. Secondly, you know that the economic preparations you have are going to help others, right? You know that you can write down your will so that other people are not impacted so negatively. Third-party harms. Thirdly, we said that you can emotionally prepare yourself because you know what's going to happen. The same applies, sit down, to the idea of ballet dancers, or me going into my, or more specifically, let's go for another example. Me and my exams, I went damn religious during my exams, prayed so damn hard, and what did I get for my SAT? I got 1460. It's a really, really crap number in general, right? But the reason for this is, and the thing is, either way I would have gotten it, because I'm just naturally a stupid individual. But the question then becomes, at least I would have prepared for myself. At least I would not start attributing it to God is working against me. At least I would not attribute it to the fact that you failed even though God gave you all the blessings you needed. I would have set my expectations properly. I would not have cried in the shower for 2 hours so my mom knocked on my door. It was a very traumatic event. So with all that, right, the analysis is that you can at least set your expectations properly. You can make preparations. You don't have to drag your mom to coax you out of crying in the bathroom. That's just a benefit overall and a third-party benefit as well. Third and last argument. how you reduce the third-party harm available. So let's take the best case scenario. You're completely happy. You're a religious individual, and you're just, or maybe you're just a ballet dancer who keeps going, and you never will incur the consequences. But you still hurt other individuals in specific circumstances. Like a poor family who internalizes the idea that somehow they're going to make it out, that their promotion is just around the bend, and they keep telling their kids, it's okay, you can get a car, we will ensure your education is there. Don't worry, just focus on your exams, you don't have to go to work, just focus on it. But when it finally breaks down, when reality comes crashing upon these children, the harms they incur are directly your fault. You are accountable for lying to these individuals, or at least not checking yourself to unlie to these individuals. You are accountable for the fact that there are other people who will be victimized by your inability to try seeking out the truth, right? Or let's just talk about, say, marriage and promising fidelity. You really think you're going to be a good individual, but by you keep on lying to yourself and to your spouse, when you inevitably do cheat, you're going to harm those individuals as well. You drag other people down with you. So even if you emerge from the breakup and you think, oh, don't worry, I'm really a good individual at heart, next time I'll do better, you've already created permanent harms upon other individuals that will never be reversed. Exceptionally proud.
Yeah.
Right, we thank the Leader of Opposition. Now let's call upon the Prime Minister. With her.
A contention that came up from the Leader of Opposition was to tell us that the information that comes from hard truth shapes a lot of decisions that we make. But I'd like to contest this. Are the decisions that you make based on that harsh truth going to be the best ones, or ones that are emotionally consumed by the harsh truth and the terrors and trauma that you feel from that harsh truth? I have one argument for you in today's debate on why spending a life preparing for the blows that are about to come is the worst life possible that you could condition a person to live in. But before that, 3 rebuttals. So the first contention was to tell us about the choices that you make using the information that you have when you are hit with the harsh truth. I think the very point in which people make decisions based on the harsh truth that they are just hit with, based on the trauma that they internalize from that harsh truth, is one that's emotionally damaging in the long run. Because the decisions are not made void of these kinds of emotions. They are emotionally consumed by you and the trauma that you feel at that point in time. And we think the decisions that you make oftentimes aren't the best ones there. Whereas on a comparative, when you live in a lie where you are comforted by it, you are emotionally stable to evaluate the situation, and I think that's where you're more likely to make a better decision. But secondly, on this idea of relationships, so I think it's true that you need to comfort yourself that you tried your best, and that's when I think under the side of government, you will do everything you can to do your best. And that's the ideal world that we live in. Because the African American child under our house will be told that he can, in fact, become a doctor, or he won't be bogged down by the structures of discrimination that exist. And we think that world's ideal because it is one that provides you a hope and optimism to move on with your daily lives. It means that you won't be consumed by the emotions of that harsh truth to make your decisions that ultimately shape how you are for the rest of your life. Because we don't think that harsh truth will define you for the rest of your life, but it can emotionally hamper you and the decisions that you make. But in the world where you do comfort yourself with a lie, and in the end you fail in your relationship and it goes in shambles, no thank you. And maybe in the worst case of side government, it didn't work out. But I think the knowledge in which you placed yourself in, making the best decisions that you could at that point in time, and having the comfort that you are fine and you will be able to move on from this, is the form of comfort that is vital to humans in nature. No thank you. I think it becomes very hard for you to move on with life, the point in which you are emotionally consumed by the trauma from that harsh truth in and of itself. But the second thing was this. So I think it was very contradictory for them to tell us that they wanted to let out the truth in parts so you can slowly accept the harsh truth and you won't be so bogged down at once. I think this is a principal contradiction because in essence, this also means that they perfectly realize how harsh the truth is and how horrible it can be when you know the like the whole essence of anything. But also, this means that I think it's worse because you cycle through that whole harsh truth one blow after another, which makes your emotional trauma even larger on a scale. But before that, yes.
So if your argument is that there's emotional trauma by people telling me there are structural reasons as to why me as an African American individual is very hard to be a doctor, why is that a traumatic experience? I don't understand. But secondly, why is comfort something that can only happen when you lie to individuals? Why can't you just comfort them like naturally and tell the truth?
The point of you telling the truth is that it's you telling that individual that it's definitely going to happen. The point in which you try to comfort that individual, even in that horrible circumstance, is when they're unlikely to believe whatever you have to say. They're likely to neglect the comfort that you give out, the emotional kind of comfort that you try to give that person, because they're so focused on the harsh truth that you have just delivered to them and the blows in which they face. Then, here's the comparative, right? I think Joshua's his example of your emotional trauma and the length of time that you face for emotional trauma was incredibly important but dismissed by the leader of opposition. This is the comparative. The point in which the child's parents are in a destructive relationship and they are bound to fall out. Under the side of government, that child will look back and have one traumatic day, and that was the day his mother told him that his parents are getting divorced. Compared to a life of 5 years of seeing your parents fight every day of your life, looking back at your childhood and seeing your parents fight and feeling that your childhood was taken away. I think that harsh truth is a world that is terrible because it prolongs the suffering that you look back to. And when you look back, you can't say that you had a perfect or happy childhood because you were bogged by the harsh truth one time after another, as the side of opposition would like to fight for in this debate. No thank you. On to my first argument in this debate, why a life of preparing for the blows is one that is extremely horrible in nature. And this is the main crux of the Prime Minister's case, the Leader of Opposition's case. Because he wanted to tell you that the point in which you are exposed to the harsh blow, you can always prepare yourself for the harsh blow, and somehow you will know that it comes, but you will be able to prepare yourself emotionally and mentally. I think that life is terrible because it is one that you will make decisions based on in preparation of a terrible time to come. This means that the decisions that you make will never be centric around yourself and what you think is the most optimistic life that you could possibly hold, but rather you are always in anticipation of the terrible things that could happen to you. I think I prefer a life where you are on the ground and you feel like you can achieve something, or isn't bogged down by your emotional baggage that the side of opposition would like to place upon you. But also, it means trading off a lot of great things in life because you're so focused on that harsh truth and preparing for that harsh truth in nature. Before that, yes?
You say emotions distort your perception of reality, but when we're dealing with ludicrous hopes or crippling depression, both will be irrational. The comparative is, at least on our side, you will look for facts because you are hunting for reality.
I think the hunt for reality in and of itself is terrible because you will always prepare yourself for the worst case scenario possible, and you will always make decisions to save yourself from that worst case scenario, considering the fact that it may or may not even happen in the first place. Because we told you that your harsh truth may not even be absolute. But the point in which you spend your whole life prepping for that terrible moment to happen is when you will lose out on the larger aspects of happiness. Because your happiness will always be being able to prevent that horrible thing from happening. And I think that's a life that robs you of a lot of choices and comparisons that you have in life. Because a life where you continuously prepare for your downfall is one where you miss out on a lot of things. Because it is a world where you will constantly overthink and overanalyze a lot of the things and the truths that happen under the other side of the house. And I think it's terrible because that form of emotional trauma is lengthened and prolonged, the point in which you are constantly thinking of it and you're constantly analyzing, is it the truth? For all those reasons, go with the side of government.
Right? We thank the Deputy Prime Minister. Now let's call upon the Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay, we get it. You like your decisions when you know that if you screw up, it's fine because you live in a comforting life. But that is not reality. That is not the world we live in. That is not the structures of patriarchy that existed. That is not the discrimination that individuals face on a day-by-day basis. You have to live in a world where reality exists and make decisions based on that reality. Yes, a comforting lie sounds very nice, but the point in which you screw up, the point in which you make the wrong decision, all your bottled anger, all your lies come out, and that is when that trauma is real. That is the kinds of things that you believe in, and when you look back at your memories and realize those were not memories of your choices, those were individuals around you making choices for you. You are no longer an individual, but it's a puppet to a lie that other people have told you. We do not want to live in a world that's principally abhorrent, that denies individuals the ability to make a rational, proper choice by weighing out the trade-offs. We understand. Maybe, I don't know why this is true also, but in the worst, when you're preparing for your worst case scenario, you somehow lose happiness. Why? Seriously, why? Your happiness is something that you as an individual can internalize, you as an individual can find definitions for. If you as an individual find happiness in knowing that in the worst case scenario, I will not suffer as much as I would have, that is happiness for the individual's content, we are okay with that world. Not everyone has to subscribe to your narratives of happiness. I think that really takes down a lot of things that Gus wants to write, because you're very dismissive to what Daniel wanted to say. Daniel told you that in reality, you need the harsh truth, because then you can make better decisions. But here's the misinterpretation coming from Japanese speech. We didn't say you have to be rude. We didn't say you have to be mean when you tell them your harsh truth. If you want to say someone is fat, don't go, Papa gemuk ya. You don't say that, right? You just go bro, maybe you're quite fat lah. Those kinds of instances where you can have proper conversations, when you can still be comforting with the kinds of truth or you want to talk about. But if the rebuttal is, I won't come and see you for support anymore, go see someone else lah. At least now you can talk about your problem. At least you know that there is a problem that exists in your life. So you can solve it. And I think that's what human nature and your human life is all about. It's about evolving from the very problems and finding more and more solutions to those problems. Your fantasy denies evolution and denies the ability for individuals to make choices. I do not want to live in that world. The second thing she said is that, the African American child can be doctor. We never say you cannot be doctor lah. Come on, you African American can be doctor, right? It's just harder lah. That's the harsh truth. It's hard to be a doctor. Why is this harsh truth important? So the moment this African American child fails to become a doctor, he can prepare, he or she can prepare themselves for that failure, and that person can internalize and know that, sometimes it won't be as good. Sometimes it won't be the utopia. That's just life. I need to suck it up. I need to be better. But your comforting lie does not give this individual the ability to mentally prepare themselves for failure, and that's why it's worse. Because every single choice we make is always a trade-off. You will fail one way or another. But in your world, you cannot prepare for that failure because you don't know what that failure will look like, because they always tell you lies and they never tell you that full truth. It's important for you to prep for the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenario is one that happens more often than not. In your world, if you only want the best case scenario, you need to tell me why individuals never suffer when they enter the real world. Never suffer when your parents say you will never be discriminated, but the harsh truth is they will hate you much more in the future. You need to tell me why that individual is tougher and that individual lives a happier life. The second thing she said is that you're very emotional, so you cannot make the proper decision. Number one, we are emotional all the time, we still make decisions. You can be angry and make certain decisions. You can be in love with someone and marry them. I think that's fine. But if your caveat is that you're very emotional and can't make a proper decision, then don't make the decision. Then wait a week, chill a bit, then you can make a decision and be better. I don't see why it's that problem. Yeah.
How are choices truly yours, and how are you given liberty when the harsh truths, which may be unrealistic too, by the way, given that this system is oftentimes indoctrinal and plagues on the lives of an individual as well?
Okay, so it's a truth, right? That's an objective truth. I don't know why it's subjective, but if that's the case, it'll be a harsh truth or something that's objective that many people will talk about. And therefore, that's probably the truth. That's how society functions, that's how the real world will look like. I don't see why you have a problem with liberty existing in this scenario. So I'll do three things in my speech right now. Number one, I'll tell you what the importance of emotion actually is and what trauma looks like in a world where you always get the harsh truth. Number two, I'll tell you the expectations of choices and how individuals live in a world where they have to lie to themselves. And number three, why you're morally denying individuals to make choices. Okay, what is the importance of emotion? You need to feel sadness, you need to feel anger, you need to feel remorse so that you can be a better person. So you know how to cope with these emotions, especially in a young age when you're exposed to these certain things. Because in the real world, you don't know when your girlfriend's going to cheat on you. In the real world, you don't know when your company boss will suddenly fire you. But if you're prepared to face these kinds of sadness and you're prepared to toughen up and live on for the next day, then you can live in the real world and you can be better off. I think that's the important nuance coming from side of opposition. But how do we deal with trauma? Trauma, we think, is something that happens once in a while, right? So if every experience that Daphne wants to characterize to be traumatic, then it's not traumatic. Because the level of trauma is what Daphne will say, every single day got harsh truth. That is not trauma anymore, that is status quo, that is the real world. Deal with it. Because those are individuals that will succeed in status quo. Those are individuals that can take the negative remarks and make themselves better individuals. Those are people that we will champion. No thank you. The second thing we'll say is the expectation of choices, and this is very important because if you as an individual lie to your child by saying that actually I have enough money, you can go study wherever you want, you have to live in a world where you have to face the brunt. You have an extra need to find even more money, even if it means taking loans, even if it means sacrificing other siblings and other kids because you promised this individual in your comforting life. Where else, in a world where you give them the harsh reality, it's a world where that child can prepare themselves. That child can maybe find a better job. That child can choose a cheaper college. Those are instances where individuals make a better choice. I think that's very clear. So the question then becomes, what a choice really means. A choice is a comparative between the pros and cons and making which one is more important. It's about counting the probability of failure and realizing that failure may happen. How do I cope with failure? This doesn't look like you will never succeed. You can, but in a world where you don't succeed, you are better off with those individuals. Why is the world where you don't succeed better off? Because realize, in a comforting lie and a harsh truth, the probability of success is still the same. So is the probability of failure. But in our world, the individuals that fail can deal with it better. In your world, the individuals that fail will probably want to kill themselves because that is everything, this goes against everything the society has ever told them. It goes against everything their parents has ever said. The third thing we'll say is why is morally, the point in which you lie to an individual, you're implicitly making the decision for them. Because you're hiding information. You're hiding the ability for another individual to make a proper comparative, to weigh out the pros and cons, to make that decision. You are morally removing the rights of an individual to make a choice, and that's why we think that you should never lie at the end of the day. We beg to oppose.
Right, we thank the Deputy Opposition. Now it's called on the government with here.
So in my speech, I'm going to be doing three things. The first of which is I'm going to speak about the issues of choices in life. The second of which is the issue of which side do individuals feel more happy and which side do individuals actualize their happiness. And the third is on the issue of rationality, which was brought up several times today. I think firstly on the issue of choice, it's important to recognize that when you tell these individuals these very harsh truths, these individuals do not only use it as a means of operation. So all of their benefits are contingent upon individuals hearing harsh truths and then using that and saying, okay, if I know this harsh truth, I will prepare myself for the prospect of failure. And they make it seem very methodological and very rational in the way they describe it. But I think it's a mischaracterization of what this actually looks like. So let me show you what this looks like. When individuals hear these truths, they're more likely to internalize it as not, it's harder to succeed, but I will not succeed. Because they recognize that the structural barriers seem aggressively, and more often not are aggressively overarching and oppressive. Therefore, they're less likely to even try to become doctors or to become lawyers or to become engineers in the first place because they recognize about how hard this truth is. Sit down, I'll take yours a bit later. And this is incredibly problematic because it means that not only do you deny these, because these individuals, okay, even if we take it in the worst case, both of these individuals are denied of the ability to become doctors, lawyers, and engineers. At the very least in our world, these individuals are not denied of the opportunity to actualize the idea of what it would feel like to become one. And that solace that they can have in their imagination or their idealization of their dream is something they lack on your side of the house. Yes.
So, if the success rate to become a doctor is very low, why do you want individuals to go through that path and failure is much likely to happen? Because they'll fail, the success is very low.
Okay, so your side of the house, when individuals hear the harsh truth, they either become locked out and trying to become doctors, which is bad because they aren't able to actualize their passion. So they live their lives recognizing that throughout society they have never been able to actualize or conceptualize their dream of becoming a doctor. So all of life, the happiness you accrue from envisioning what you could be or envisioning your ideas, you lose on your side of the house. At the very least on our side of the house, even if you do fail when you try to become a doctor, at least you can reflect, okay, I failed, but at least when I was able to think of when I become a doctor, I still remember those times, and those times were good. I'm still able to find solace in my imagination. I'm still able to find solace and comfort in my thoughts, and that's something you deny individuals at the moment in which you tell them a harsh truth. So yes, I think it's unreasonable to think the choice become more informed. More often, the choice become plagued by fear and plagued by your suppression of what you want to become because you feel that it's too difficult or you feel that it's impossible to achieve. Our side is the only side of the house in which you can find solace within your thoughts and find solace within your envisionment of what you could be. And I think that's something that you deny individuals on your side of the house. I think when you think about how lies are principally bad and how lying individuals principally denies them the right to choice, I think this is untrue. Because if you tell them the harsh truth, the way they respond to it is also heavily emotional and heavily irrational. Which means that you still deny them the ability to make a completely rational choice on both sides of the house. But at least on our side of the house, the denial of the rationality of the choice means they become happier when they live in that reality. And I think that's better on our side of the house, yes.
So if a child is very horrible at dancing, would the parents still tell them it's okay, just try harder, you can be a dancer in the future?
Yes, because at the very least, if a child is horrible in dancing, if their parents tell them, yes, you're actually a good dancer, or yes, you actually can do things, at least even if other people don't see them as a good dancer, at least they feel that individuals who tell them that comforting lie still recognize innate talent within them. And that's a benefit that's exclusive to our side of the house, because at least these individuals recognize and actualize worth within of themselves. Because maybe these individuals, when they hear the harsh truth, aren't going to change themselves. You have to recognize that more often than when you hear these harsh truths, you're less likely to change themselves because the emotional suffering, which you go to definitely explain extensively about, prevents you from being able to make these changes with a rational and with a sound mind. More often than not, you're more likely to lock yourself out of opportunities, and more often than not, you're more likely to lock yourself out of happiness, which is bad for individuals. And that moves straight on to my second point. Which side do individuals feel most happy? I think it's important to recognize that on our side of the house, when your girlfriend tells you, look, you're a great person, but I'm just in love with someone else now. It's better than a world in which your girlfriend tells you, you were a terrible person to begin with and I never liked you to begin with. Because recognize that in the second scenario, at the very least, you're able to find solace in the fact that you had worth to begin with, and that your failure is not inherently all of your fault, even if it may be. And I think that's something that's important to recognize, because individuals need to find solace within their thoughts, even if these things are a lie. Because in reality, happiness in and of itself is illusionary to some extent. Because we conceptualize happiness based on expectations and based on what we believe those outcomes to be. At the point at which we tell individuals the harsh truth, we then deny them the ability to even actualize the conception of what that happiness could look like. And that's a harm that is exclusive to your side of the house. Because it is on our side of the house, even when individuals fail, even when individuals take the blow, and when individuals suffer, at the very least, there was a period of time in which the individuals were happy. On your side of the house, when these individuals prepare for the worst, they are never really truly happy. Because all of their life, they're preparing for the expectation of the worst. And that's not something they can ever find solace or happiness in, because they're never at peace within themselves at any point in their life. So at least in the worst case on our side of the house, when these individuals do suffer in the end, there was a period of time at which they felt happy and a period of time in which they were able to actualize their choices. And because the individuals are less likely to be rational due to these emotions, it's better that they have happiness for that short-term period of time where they have the ability to actualize their lives. Yes.
So in your world, the point in which they fail, their total mental health deteriorates because everything they believed in was false. In our world, if they fail, they can still pick up themselves and move on and find other avenues of happiness. Why are you denying individuals that other avenues of happiness?
So I think firstly, we don't deny individuals the other avenues of happiness if they fail. So like when individuals fail in our world, even if they were told all these positive things, they seem to think, oh, the failure could be attributed to something else, or some sort of external factor that I never considered. But they're never likely to believe that throughout the journey they were destined to fail to begin with. So they find happiness in the fact that they tried, and they can find happiness in the fact that they had a dream, and that that dream was something that they saw themselves becoming. And maybe when they realize that they fail, they might try again, and they can maybe find happiness in the fact that somehow eventually they escape from those cycles completely. But even if they decide to do something completely different, it doesn't stop you from being able to try new things when you recognize that you failed in a particular area. I think what's more likely to happen in your side house, if you tell individuals the harsh truth from the get-go, is they're less likely to be able to explore those avenues of happiness, because the harsh truth of their dream being crushed is more likely to be overbearing on them to begin with, and they're less likely to be able to make the rational decisions to prepare for their choices, or to prepare for them seeking the other avenues of happiness. And for all of those reasons, I'm very, very proud.
Right, we thank the government whip. Now let's call upon the opposition to come here.
Okay. So, review. Never mind. Okay.
I know a boy who has recently lost his mother. Real story. Alright? He might be in a lot of denial. He might be going through, I don't know, an existential crisis, right? Maybe he doesn't believe that what has happened has just happened, right? But no matter what he wants to tell himself, these comforting lies, the reality will come and smack him in the face, and it will say to him, bro, your mom is dead. What do you do now? There's a very important thing that we need to understand in this debate. There are two things, in fact, that we need to understand. The first is the ethics of lying and its implications, and the second is why living in reality is significantly better than living in a lie. Firstly, the ethics of lying. Let's first talk about the imbalance of information in a large majority of cases. Examples thrown left and right, center, back, front, everywhere in this debate. Alright? There's an imbalance of information when it comes to lying, because the person that receives this information acts on false information. Why is that important, right? You're restrained from accurate information. Now, why does that matter? Because it translates into the things that you do. Your expectations are set based on the information you receive, and based on these expectations and based on this information, you then decide what next to do. So we are now making decisions that are predicated on a non-existent ideal as opposed to a grounded decision that is based in reality. Your choices now are based on false information that was told to you, which will then impact how you will lay out your life later on. I'll explain this further. Let's explore what a meaningful choice is to begin with, right? What makes a meaningful choice meaningful at all? The information that you base your decisions on must be meaningful. We think that that must be a prerequisite to a meaningful choice. Now, it is meaningful when the information is grounded into reality, because this leads into options grounded in reality with no risk of unexpected things happening. Because of course things can go wrong, but if you know from the beginning this information is grounded, the decision is grounded with the risks, and that makes that choice more relevant or more meaningful, because it is with the understanding that things can go right or things can go wrong. If your expectations are one-sided, if things go wrong, that makes your choice less meaningful because it did not take into account what could have happened and what could have gone wrong. Give me a second, right? So the information you spread isn't meaningful, right? Because it is then fabricated. And the thing is, reality will always catch up to you. And that's reality, right? It will always catch up to you. Living and making your life decisions based on fabricated information will always lead to later consequences, or will lead to later consequences most of the time. And even if it doesn't, it's still not something that we're very happy with. We need to understand that in this debate, the government side has been living in a fairy world filled with toxic positivity, where we hear plenty of nonsense terms like good vibes only, don't worry bro, you got this, as opposed to harsher realities that say, and by the way, it can also be very comforting, that sound more like this: look bro, I know times are tough, you've just lost your mom, and getting over this will be very difficult. But I'm sure both of us can move on from this together. It is true your mom just died, right? That's the truth. It is true that it will be difficult. But that doesn't mean that what we tell you cannot be comforting. And this doesn't mean that you cannot get over the harsh realities, right? That's just how things are. Second, why is living in reality significantly better than living in a lie? But I'll take Jit first.
Yeah. So I think the harsh truth isn't there are options to success and failure, but rather that you're more likely to fail than succeed when you're structurally disadvantaged.
Okay, so let's talk about structural and all that. I'll talk about that in a second. Right? So living in reality is significantly better. Now, there's a really big idea that came up from the side of opposition, right? About being prepared for loss and failure. And this will also eventually deal with their, preconceived bias about wanting to let everyone know that things will be okay no matter what, and how telling people that can be very dangerous. Alright? Now, it's all about setting expectations, and I've said this already. Life is cruel and reality always catches up. We need to emphasize this. If you live thinking that nothing bad will happen to you, when it comes, it breaks your trust in the world, and it breaks your trust in potentially the relationships that you have with the people that fabricated your expectations and fabricated your decisions for you. This means that later on, after like 10 years of ballet class, you realize that you could never really build a career off of this because you're really just not that good at ballet. And you will say to the people that told you at the beginning and supported you, quote unquote, you'll ask them, I thought you said that I was a great ballet dancer. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why are these options restricted from me? But this doesn't mean that you just break your trust that you have in others. But it's 10 years of ballet classes that were futile because you're just not that great at it. It's time wasted. It's energy wasted. It's passion wasted. Now all these things could have been redirected anywhere else, which is another thing that the side of government fails to understand. They think that you can only do one thing that makes you happy and people have no other options. The thing is, you cannot have any other options if you do not explore any other options. And that's something that becomes a lot easier to access when you know that some decisions are just not as likely to give you the result you want as opposed to others. No thank you. Now, opposed to finding out early, let's contrast. You can redirect your passion, your energy somewhere else. Because even if you do decide to continue ballet after learning that you're garbage at it, right? That's when you can really just ignite your passion for it and as a hobby. But at the same time, you need to ground yourself in reality by knowing that you're not going to be performing the Nutcracker or the Swan or whatever famous ballets in front of the Queen, and you need to find other sources of income. Alright? Because ultimately, there are things that will catch up to us because of investing in a supposedly career that we're never going to be able to monetize. Eventually, we're going to be broke, we can't pay the bills. What if you become homeless? What if your kids go hungry? All these things will catch up to you, and we need to be able to deal with them before they come. Alright? And we need to be realistic. Now, success can also be more meaningful on our side. How do we do this? Let's say this whole doctor thing, and it doesn't have to be African Americans because being a doctor is hard, full stop. Alright? Knowing you did something that's hard, alright, and actually doing it is better than suddenly being a doctor when your whole life and people like your family said, yeah, don't worry, we are also a doctor. It's really easy being a doctor, don't worry. It's just biology, form 4, accounting, no problem. It's more meaningful when you know that what you did was difficult. And that is more value to you and to your actions and what you're going to do with a doctorate qualification. Now lastly, quickly on happiness. Now again, this is just about the preconception that the side of government has. It is not one thing that grants happiness. We are not restricted in that way. We are very flexible more often than not. Now people can explore other areas and ultimately have confidence that you do good at what you do, or at the very least you're prepared to face the consequences if things don't go the way you want it to go. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that boy who has recently lost his mother eventually has to face the reality that his mom has just passed away. No matter what, this is what he will have to do. Filling your time in the meantime with lies and nonsense is not going to do him any good. Very, very proud to oppose.
Right. Black.
I don't have a sad story about my mother. Instead, she tells me I'm handsome every time I wake up. She tells me I look good. Well, the thing is, that fundamentally misled me. That means I spent 30 of my years looking even uglier, right? Like, I just showed the flaps on my arms. I didn't realize that something like this would at least cover it up, right? And when I faced the cruel reality that Josh told me that I'm like a 4 out of 10 at best, I realized that I needed to change. I could improve my life. I did not have to suffer the impacts that my mother forced upon me. That is the reality we stand for. That is the better world on our side. I'm going to narrow this debate into 3, at least the most significant issues. Firstly, when reality caves in, who emerges better? Secondly, will harsh truth somehow manipulate your emotions such that you cannot make rational decisions? It's so irrelevant, but we'll deal with it anyways. And thirdly, will you be beaten away from passions that maybe you had a small chance of succeeding in, right? Let's deal with the first part. They tell us that when reality caves in, you're suddenly going to feel better. What is the reasoning? They say that you have a fallback. You think about those happy years when your mom told you you looked great. You think about all those happy times. But recognize, we can do a lot of analysis as to why that isn't the case. The entire experience is poisoned. You were a puppet. You were a fool. Every time I think of my mother, I think that she lied to me. Maybe I was happy for those small seconds, but those seconds were illusory. Those seconds were something that were going to make me into an even worse position. And recognize how trauma naturally works, right? When there's a traumatic event and there's a cause, maybe the cause was kind of happy, but the human mind naturally will connect the cause to the harm that came out, which means that they will always be wedded in my own mind. I will always connotate the cause with the harm that befell me, right? Those are things that you cannot deny. That's how basic psychology typically works, right? But secondly, let's just say Jit tells us that, at least you have 10 years of your life, you were kind of happy being the black doctor or non-black doctor who was working that hard, right? At least you could look back and say, I was happy then. I may see everything bad that happened then, but at least for 10 years I had some happiness. Look, that assumes that you only have one interest in your entire life. That only being a doctor is somehow going to make everything better for you. Look, right, if you don't want to go doctor, go for something that is less strenuous like biologist, right? Or just find something else, right? Interests constantly shift. or you can at least change your framework as we recommended, right? Maybe you realize that, you know what, maybe I shouldn't even try finding enjoyment in my job, and you can only do that when you face the harsh reality that jobs are not for your pleasure. So therefore, you're more likely to change yourself, change your framework, even in the worst case scenario where you have no other interests that inspire you. But thirdly, even if the happiness of fallback does improve, somehow you really do think it's so great, and so you get to, and it's just overall better, we say our objective benefits are better, right? Because notice the things they did not respond to. A, they did not respond to the fact that you spent 10 years of your life wasted in ballet school only to find that you will fail. You never, even if you are happy that you spent those 10 years, you could have spent those years finding other interests that you may enjoy more, other interests that are less costly, right? These are exclusive harms that befall their side. Secondly, you waste a lot of money. And on top of that, right, it's not just your money, it's often your family's money. Their family pumps it into you, assuming that you're going to pay it off because you keep telling them that you will make it out, and you do not. Which leads me to the third party harm, right? We brought this as one of the first few arguments we launched, and they've never actually comprehensively dealt with the fact that you always bring other people down with you. So even if you are happy, even if you got this grand ass fallback, that's never going to make you feel satisfied. Secondly, they tell us that harsh truths will somehow manipulate your emotions. No, that they can only win when they swirl the emotion from truth into anything we want it to define it as, right? They're literally saying truths are now lies. We don't even understand where this argument came from, but assuming it's the case, right? Let's engage with it. Let's assume the more nuanced idea is that because you're bummed out from the worst case, they think it's more likely. But first, and here's the big clincher, they said it after you have been traumatized, after reality caves in, and you're so traumatized that when you hear the bad news, you will feel even worse, therefore you will attract all their harm to crew. But we prevent it from the very get-go. We prevent you from reality caving in. They get damage control. We need to prevent it from happening in the first place. And when you're a young child, just having a normal conversation with your parents, is it a good idea to be a doctor, Mom? I'm not going to be traumatized because it's just a conversation in the car. Is it really that bad? The mom could say, oh, it's probably a bit risky. I think there are serious harms here, here, and here. You can make an objective decision there that isn't going to traumatize you for life. You can also work with probability. They say the worst case will always be something you're concerned about. But look, right, as a child, I can just think, what is the probability that I will fail? Do I really have the determination? Because society operates at a spectrum. Some people have spine, and they know they have spine. They're going to go in, they're going to succeed, they're going to be the best black doctor in all of human history. But there are a lot of people who do not have spine, like me, who do not have IQ, like me, who do not have any moral courage, like me. What happens to them? I spent 10 years in medical school, I spent 10 years in the States, I waste my parents' money, and it's a complete disaster, right? In which case, we think that it is perfectly, the emotional manipulation is not nearly that bad. Exceptionally proud to oppose.
Damn, bro, you went hard, man. Self-deprecation is finest.
Fair enough.
Mine's not going to be happy with that.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Let me say it. Let me say this. You feel like stumble for some reason. Don't. Dangerous.
Any happiness that I could have potentially accrued from the process of getting to that big unrealistic dream is one that can largely compensate for the horrible things that happen later on. But what I can't compensate is the regret that I didn't take it because of the harsh reality that was thrown at me, and the regret that comes when I tried everything I could to prevent it from happening. This debate cannot be judged upon the amount of information that you have to make a decision. This debate is not about the decision that you make thereof, but this debate is, number one, about the happiness of that individual at that point in time, and the second, the length of time you suffer from the harsh truth. So here's where we've told you a few things in this debate. We told you that the comforting lie would ultimately lead to better choices, or at least more optimistic choices that could bring you happiness. Here's why that's very important. Because under the side of government, their very goal in this debate was to make you analyze and prevent your failures from happening. But what does the prevention of failure look like? It looks like not opting into that decision at all because of the potential failure that you could face. And I think this is terrible because the harsh truth will always say that odds are stacked against you. And you're more likely to opt out of it, in essence, because of the potential failure that you could have. And that's when it's because you spend your life preparing and preventing that very failure in and of itself. I think risks need to be taken by these individuals in the first place, and the potential happiness that they could accrue from it is great. But also, here's where, under the side of opposition, you're more likely to trade off things that make you happy. Like, their response to us saying that you trade off happiness is that you have a lot of avenues to happiness. I think if you're hit with a harsh truth in a lot of these areas, you're likely to trade them all off. you will trade them all off the point at which you think these forms of happiness are not sustainable. And I think that's a horrible world to live in, because you place an artificial ceiling upon the choices that you make. And that's what we told you from all three speakers that was unresponded to. I think the concept of overanalyzing and overthinking influences the types of decisions that you make and ultimately caps the amount of happiness that you can ascertain under the side of opposition. On a comparative, I think side of government's world is much more preferable, the point in which you make decisions on that line. You comfort yourself that it's possible for you to achieve it, and you comfort yourself and convince yourself that it's a great decision to begin with. What happens in the worst case scenario under the side of government where you do fail and after everything you do, it's a lie? Your lie makes you a failure. I think the lie in and of itself softens the blow of that harsh truth when you fail. And this is extremely important for you to analyze, because I brought up that argument from the get-go, but it was completely unresponded to. Here's why the blow in which you have after you're softened with the lie is less harmful to you. This is because you tried. You enjoyed yourself pursuing what you love during that point in time. Oftentimes, I know I'm not going to go to Worlds, but the thing is, throughout the period of time, is that I enjoyed debating and I had the opportunity to continue pursuing debate, even though it's not a tangible thing with a tangible outcome as the side of opposition wanted to take in this debate. Even if you end up in the worst case scenario of side of government, where you are less financially stable, I think the process of getting there brought you immense amount of happiness that compensates for the situation in which you're currently in. But also, I think on a comparative, in Gov's best case scenario, where you do opt out of that situation, you're more likely to be consumed by regret of not taking that chance in the first place, because you're so bogged down emotionally by that situation. And I think it's a horrible circumstance that limits a lot of individuals, because oftentimes the harsh truth is really harsh and it's really convincing for you to opt out of it. And that's a world that we choose not to live in. Because if every day I can think, I can ascertain some form of outcome from debating that's tangible, it is one where I'm likely to ascertain happiness from the process.